Stories, tales and fables are a mainstay of our oral tradition. Not all fairy tales begin with once upon a time. Some start with when I am elected. This story begins with a new paradigm was written to enslave humanity. Not quite as catchy as in a galaxy far, far away, but slightly more apt. We begin. Many, many years ago lived an emperor who's thought so much of new ideas and theories that he spent all his time and money in order to obtain them. His only ambition was to always be well informed with the latest information. He did not care for the everyday running of his kingdom. The only thing he truly thought anything of was to go out and show off his new knowledge as often as possible. He had a smart quote for every hour of the day. As often as you would say of a normal king, he is busy ruling the kingdom, you could say of him the emperor is in his study learning new stuff. The great city where he lived was a very busy place, and every day many strangers from all parts of the world arrived. One day, two swindlers came to the city and told everyone they were great scholars. They said that they had discovered the true nature of the world, and their discovery was so complex that not everyone was smart enough to grasp it. In fact, anyone not able to understand it would be considered stupid. The news of the scholars and their claim reached the emperor. The emperor thought to himself, if I could learn this new knowledge, I would be able to find out which people in my kingdom are stupid and therefore should not be in their jobs. I must have this new information without delay, thought the emperor to himself. He summoned the two scholars to the palace. He gave a large sum of money to those two rascals so he could get the newfound information. So the two pseudoscientists told the emperor that the world was in fact a giant ball, and that it was 24,000 miles in circumference, and that it span at 1,000 miles an hour as it travelled around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour, whilst the sun itself was moving at 448,000 miles an hour. But, they said, only incredibly clever people could grasp this theory. Obviously, the emperor just smiled, and assured the two con men he fully understood what he had heard, and he had, in fact, suspected that to be the case for some time. He told the two men he would test his court to see who was smart enough to remain within his employ. The two set about warning the courtiers, the ministers, advisers, ambassadors and scholars of the court, for a small fee of course, about the upcoming test, and that their jobs and easy lifestyle would end if the emperor believed them to be too stupid to understand the newfound knowledge. The emperor assembled his court. He explained his new knowledge, and to his surprise his entire court understood the theory, and he was pleased, so pleased that he decided to inform the entire city. A few days later, the entire city gathered to hear the emperor's news. In a loud, clear voice, the emperor addressed the entire city. I have discovered the world is a sphere, with a radius of 3,959 miles. It spins at 1,000 miles an hour, as it moves around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. Isn't that amazing? He declared. The sound of concerned mumblings filled the crowd. Suddenly, one of the children of a prominent family piped up. But if it is 3,959 miles in radius, then the horizon could be no more than 1.225 times the square root of an observer's height in feet. I can see beyond that. This theory can't be right. Suddenly, the royal guard descended upon the family, and they were put to the sword right there and then, as the crowd stood in shocked silence. The emperor's voice rang out, I shall not allow this to be questioned. Anyone found not conforming to my new cosmology will be considered a stupid idiot and shall be killed to prevent the chance of breeding. I shall have only the smartest subjects within my empire. The courtiers, ministers, advisers, ambassadors, scholars, and the soldiers, not wishing to jeopardize their income, positions, and ultimately their lives, backed the emperor. Later that night, a group of elders gathered in secret to discuss the day's events. It was agreed that for the safety of the young children and the following generations, it would be best to teach the new cosmology. However, the truth would need to be passed down. As the years passed by, fewer and fewer people remembered the true Earth knowledge. Worse still, people were continually distracted and so apathetic that if someone was to look in from the outside, they might mistake the entire populace for mindless zombies. But the truth, like an idea, cannot be destroyed. And like nature, it will always find a way. The truth about the real shape of the world has started to grow, thrive, and blossom back into the consciousness. Whatever happens, don't you be the last one to figure it out.
Well, we all believed in that spinning ball. Indoctrination blinded us all. From the very first day that we went to school, they put a globe in your face and that thing looked cool. The teacher explained how it all worked. Of course it sounded so berserk, but who was I to question it? Because I was just a tiny kid. It sounded crazy as could be, but teacher would never lie to me. She was real nice, she didn't know. She too was taught to believe in that globe. I don't blame her, it wasn't her fault. She was only repeating what she'd been taught. I went through life believing that lie. That spinning ball was now in my mind.